Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Analytic Stories. We have Cindi Howson, who I'm sure many of you know. She is pretty well known in our space, so I'm super excited that she's with us today. So thanks so much, Cindi.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So now, some of you may have seen one of my posts. I promised to make a bit of a fashion statement. So Cindi, I'm going to let you judge. What do you think about this shirt? Is this visualization enough?
Yeah, it reminds me of artwork in a doctor's office.
There I go for asking. Perfect. Well, sometimes there's questions that should be left unasked. Anyway, so a couple of housekeeping things. This is being recorded, so you'll get a chance to listen as many times as you want to all the great things we talk about. And we are not going to be answering any Q&A today, but if you have any, you could put it below the window, and Cindi and I will do our best to get back to you afterwards. All right, so we're going to jump in. Here we go. Now, you've been in the field of business intelligence for a long time. I'll only saying this from your bio. It says over 20 years.
Yeah.
So probably since you were like, what, 15? Right?
Okay, flattery gets you nowhere. Haven't you done that now from the BI bake-offs?
Now, in that time, I'm sure you've seen lots of bad things and lots of good things. So I would prefer, let's talk about the good things. Now, instead of 20 years, let's focus on a little bit shorter time frame and think about, is there something you could recommend to the audience that's possible for them to do, say, in 20 days?
Yes. So I'll speak from two perspectives. One is, what can you do for yourself as a data and analytics professional? And then what can you do for, let's say, your teams or your business, your organization? And the first one is always be learning. And I think it's hard to make time for learning because we're so busy, busier than ever before. And so carving out time for that, whether it's reading or doing a virtual class or listening to a podcast. I was recently talking to the CDO of Just Eat in Europe, and he said he reads, I think it's 2 hours a day. So that, I know that, yeah. I'm like, okay, what do you read? And do you turn off all notifications? Is this at night? What do you do? So that would be the first thing. The second thing for your teams within 20 days is setting up things like lunch and learns, actually making data fluency part of the DNA. You don't change behaviors overnight. So bringing together people, talking about what is the impact of data and analytics, that you have to be constantly socializing. And I don't think we do enough of that as an industry. So you can start with your lunch and learns, brown bags, or Zoom meetings, what have you. So that's what I would recommend in 20 days.
Yeah, well, I like the fact that you took both angles of that. So let me ask you a couple follow-ons. So in terms of podcasts, now I know there's so many podcasts. Do you have a favorite just in general? And do you have any you think that you could recommend that are more, tied to what we're working on?
Yeah. Am I allowed to plug the Data Chief?
You can do whatever you want here.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I would say I'm more a reader. I have books all over. But so I was not much of a podcast listener myself. Occasionally, there's a few I would listen to. But I was asked last December to start the Data Chief podcast. So we were working on this, figuring out the storyline, figuring out the guests. What are the takeaways that we want people to have starting last December? And we launched that actually in April, coincidentally, on my wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So this is why I remember when it launched. And when you're recording the podcast, you're so focused on what is the guest telling me? Oh, how do I connect that? Can I probe a little deeper? And I almost don't get to process it fully in the moment. So this past weekend, just re-listening to Craig Rowlands from Metabank in Australia, or a few weeks ago we had Bernard Marr. He's written like 20 books, just a bright mind in the space. For me, it was such a treat to re-listen and relearn. So those guests inspire me, and I just feel blessed that people share their stories. Beyond that, I'm listening to a number. I like Reed Hastings' Masters of Scale.
Yeah.
I like Brene Brown, of course. Her quote, data is stories with soul. Or did I get that? Stories or data with soul. I get that quote wrong all the time. From a personal viewpoint, and how to be our best selves. I'm listening to the new Snowflake podcast as well, The Rise of the Data Cloud. So a few. I love Miko Yuck's Analytics on Fire. Wayne was doing it for a while. I don't think he's doing one anymore. So I think podcasts are like good books. You can be listening to several. Depends what your takeaway is.
Right.
What do you listen to?
The one I listen to the most is called More Cheese, Less Whiskers.
Okay. Is that about change management?
A little bit. It's not to get too far off track. It's this guy, Dean Jackson, and he's like this marketing guru. And he typically has a guest on, and he does an analysis of their business in like 20 minutes. And it's just brilliant. And he's like very funny and loose, but they get like really to the heart of the matter. So it's being someone and usually it's people who work on their own or in small companies that he's doing this with. So for me, it's very relevant because I'm always listening for, that sounds like me. I should probably think about doing that. And it's not very businessy.
Yeah.
In terms of like talking generic strategy terms, things like that. And then I have a lot of other, I listen to the same Reed Hastings and Guy Raz, who was on. I like him. He actually has a couple. So yeah,
good.
Try to mix it up a little bit.
2 tips. And
yeah, absolutely. So just finishing up this one question though about the learning some more. So I think this is good, and I should go back and listen to the episodes I've done because of course it's the same situation. You're so busy working to do a great job as the host. The idea of a lunch and learn, I think, is very good, and you hear that a lot. Now, let's just say my day job is I'm a data analyst, and then somebody comes and says, "Lee, do a lunch and learn," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, what are some of the things that I need to think about doing to set up a lunch and learn to make it successful? Because not everybody is just going to know how to do something like that when it's thrown at them.
Yeah. So their first reaction may be, "I'm too busy. I don't have time for this." And the first thing is to think, if you want to evolve, if you're an analyst and you want to evolve your career, your skills, at ThoughtSpot, we talk about becoming the analyst of the future, where it's working on the higher value problems rather than just churning out another dashboard or a report, which there's just no way anyone can keep up with that demand in the old ways of working. So you do have to make enablement and education a priority. And then think about, who is your target audience? Are you doing lunch and learns for people that already know data and analytics technology? So that might be things like, what is data storytelling? What are tips and tricks in a particular platform? So that's one target audience. The other would be your business stakeholders who are trying to understand how to improve their data and analytics maturity and impact. And for those audiences, I would always start with a anecdote or a case study of how you either changed people's behavior or what was the business benefit of using data. So that's more changing their thinking about going from gut feel decision making to really data driven cultures.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like breaking it down into some of those pieces because what we want to do here is make sure people can leave and feel like they could do it. Start on that path. So I like the idea about the anecdotes too. Would you do something that's more from that business, or have you seen it better to be something that's outside of the business? Or I know it doesn't have to be either or, but what's your perspective?
Both. I mean, because from outside the business, that's where you may get the best in class case studies that's truly aspirational. Inside the business is what gives you what is the state of data and analytics within the company, and making it more relevant and tangible. But I say go outside your industry and your business for the aspirational.
Yeah, I like that. That's perfect. And actually, this is a perfect lead in to the next thing I want to talk about, this idea of aspirational. So thanks for setting it up. Now, I've known you for a long time, and actually early when I set this company up, you were very helpful in helping me think through some of the issues and how I wanted to position it. So I know I've thanked you many times, but I'll just thank you again. And you ran your company for about 14, 15 years, and then you went to do consulting at Gartner, where you were working on the Magic Quadrant, and now you're at ThoughtSpot, which I'm sure most people know. Now, in all of that work, especially as a consultant, I'm guessing there's been lots of uncomfortable moments, but I want to talk about in those jobs and being a consultant. But now you've made what I think is a big transition, going from being a consultant to being inside a company, even though it might be a small company. And it's a little bit, maybe more traditional than when you're on your own as a consultant. So can you think about a moment so far, because you've been there over a year, where maybe you had something uncomfortable during that transition, and talk about why it was hard, and then how that applies to people who are working in this field, just in their jobs.
Yeah. So first off, if I go back to our conversation when you were starting your own business, I'm like, why are you doing this? Because I was thinking of getting out of my card. Like somebody sent me another 25-page contract for one day of consulting. I just thought, this is diminishing returns. But so glad to see that you're still thriving, Lee. It's all good. And I wasn't sure if you were going to ask me an uncomfortable moment at Gartner when I first made that move. So I was thinking about those stories, or in the last year and a half.
You could share either. Yeah, anything's up for grabs.
Yeah, and to be clear, so within Gartner, we think of consulting as one thing, and industry analyst is a little bit different. Either way, you're giving advice. Consultants, I think, we think of implementing and building. At Gartner, it's very much either a half-hour inquiry call, or at best, maybe a one-day workshop. But we don't have to live with the consequences. And I think that is part of why I wanted to make a move. My dad used to say to me, there's 3 types of people: those who watch things happen, those who make things happen, and those who say, what the hell happened? And I did want to get back to more making things happen, both from driving or influencing the ThoughtSpot product strategy, but also really working with some of our customers on the things that hold them back from leveraging data and analytics. And as much as I love the technology, and to me, I mean, I was writing about search as an enabler to mass adoption of data and analytics, back in 2007, 6 years before ThoughtSpot was even founded, let's say. So that's really cool. But the harder things are the power in politics, the culture, the people change management, the how to organize the BI and analytics team. So if I think about a hard moment at Gartner was doing the first BI bake-off. You were at some with TDWI, and maybe we'd get 100 people there. At Gartner, we'd get, it's just a bigger stage to fail and to have everyone mad at you that they didn't get an invite. So that first one in 2015 at Gartner was very uncomfortable and more stressful than normal. And then if I think ThoughtSpot, every day is a new adventure, because the role that I do, most tech companies don't have this role. So it's carving a new path and sometimes bumping heads, because I don't sell software, and I'm very candid about where ThoughtSpot fits within the analytics landscape and where we don't. And that can be hard internally for maybe a salesperson to hear. But if we're ultimately going to be successful, we need to be deployed in the right use cases and the right way for our customers to see us as true partners on their journey.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I'm sure everybody wants the software to do everything. Right.
Yeah.
And this reminds me, and maybe you have a story about this. This reminds me of what still I think is a huge problem in the visualization space, which is people make these dashboards and they jam a whole bunch of stuff on it. And maybe it doesn't have to just be one page. They may make a lot of pages where they're jamming stuff on. And then they put a lot of interactive features on it. So, here, you can do anything with this. And I look at that and I go, you can do nothing. With
or you can find nothing. It's
right. And I call this, it's the needle in the haystack. Yeah. I wish I have a cartoon about this that I'm working on, but like, you dive into this massive, massive haystack, and maybe you come out with a teeny tiny insight, if you're lucky, right? And it's like that idea that people wanted to do everything, but you got to focus on your customer, right? Like you're saying. And I think that's a big shift. So what have you seen with that kind of example? Because I'm sure you've come across that.
Yeah, and Lee, I can't remember if this was you who wrote this or if this was Stephen Few or maybe Donald Farmer, but the dashboards that look like a pinball machine, you don't want that. But this is where I say state of the art changes over time. And let's go back to, the way the BI bake-offs even started was a dashboard bake-off. And what was state of the art? Excelsius at that time, using Flash. And Tableau didn't even have dashboard capabilities. They only could have one visualization at a time. So state of the art keeps changing. And I think what's really relevant and validating for me is this year, Gartner, in their top 10 tech trends note, recognized the decline of the dashboard. This is a hard message for people that is their job to develop dashboards. The dashboard is not the end game. It is the insight that the data gives them. So let a search-based interface generate the insight, or better yet, let the AI engine find that proverbial needle in the haystack. So we don't even use the word dashboard, we use pinboard, because it's really about pinning things like in Pinterest or the way you customize your Spotify playlist. But I do think if you've grown up in that space, you're like, wait, I want to snap to grid, and I want rulers, and I want, high level formatting. well, maybe if you're producing an annual report that's static for a year, you really want that extensive formatting. But to me, it's about um, good enough formatting and layout, but more how can I accelerate finding that needle in the haystack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tough one, and we are kind of in between space right now, where some of the that more automated technology is coming into play,
Yeah.
and it's going to require definitely a shift in thinking. I don't know where it's going to end up, but now here's another great transition. This is perfect today. So you talked because you're talking about like the power of AI, and to do this for you. So I want to talk about something powerful. Now, oh wait, we gotta check here and see if I can get this little picture up on the screen. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get it up. I wanted to put a picture up of what we call the Jersey Devil. And I'll
Right.
just explain to people. If it would have been up, it'd been easier. The Jersey Devil is a mythical creature, supposedly mythical, although some people have claimed to run into it.
In the Pine Barrens.
If you Wikipedia it, it seems like someone just took lots of different animals, like 5 or 6 animals, and squished them together to make this thing. It's like a goat and a bird and I don't know. It's supposed to be scary. Anyway, so let's say this Halloween, Cindi, you take a trip, because Cindy's pretty far north in Jersey. So she goes to South Jersey, takes a trip to the south. She wants to take a nice walk on the boardwalk. It's pretty quiet. But you are afraid of running into the Jersey Devil. Now, if you happen to cross paths, just happen, you might be so scared it causes you to forget all your knowledge about analytics. You remember everything else, but this analytics, for some reason, you can't think about anymore. So if there's one, yeah, maybe. If there was one thing you did want to remember, what would that be?
Well, first off, can we just say, like, because some people are saying, Cindi, get off your New Jersey shtick already, but and you're from New Jersey too, Lee. You have to fess up. You're from a much hipper city than I am. But I grew up in New Jersey. I left New Jersey for a long time, I think 20 years, and chose to come back here really after 9/11. So I do love New Jersey. I swore I would never come back for a lot of different reasons, and found this lovely corner, as you said, in Northwest New Jersey, where we do have black bear and foxes, but no, the Jersey Devil's south. And you are freaking me out, because now we're coming up to Halloween, and I do remember being afraid as a kid in South Jersey, because there were lots of rumors about the Jersey Devil. Okay, now you can see I'm stalling.
You're growing up.
What's the one thing, the one skill, or the one thing? Like, did you want a skill or a happy memory? What?
Well, no, I think more of a skill, because what I want to do is reflect on something that people should be thinking about for themselves as, a skill that if they don't have it, they need to think about maybe developing it.
Okay. So the one skill, and I think a gift that I have, is observation. And observation visually and auditory. So when somebody gives me a problem, or if I'm having a hard conversation with a customer about their data and analytics strategy, or even lack thereof, the shoot from the hip strategy, or we have data, let's just throw it out there and see what happens, is not a strategy. But I'm listening to what they're telling me, and I'm listening to what they're not telling me, and I'm also looking around the room to see when are people getting angry or frustrated or excited. And this is why I say observation, watching. I'm watching for stuff like this and angry faces, which is harder to do over Zoom. And I think this is where sometimes we take people at their word, what they want to do or what the blockers are. And I think sometimes it takes more probing and listening to actually unpack what are the real blockers and what are the real opportunities. Like, here's the number one use case I would go after. Sometimes it's both.
That's interesting. I think that's probably a skill a lot of people who are more technical may not really have as much of as they should. So are there any questions that you find that are helpful that start to unpack some of those things that we could use, you could share with people?
I do think you have to build up trust first to have these hard conversations. And I would push back on this, that technical people don't have that. I actually see a lot of creativity with technical people. Like they're musicians in their spare time. I'm seeing a lot of bakers too on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I wonder, is there something in the brain about creativity and problem solving? Technical people are creative, but have we built up these processes over decades of, we'll document your requirements, throw it over a fence, and let's come back? Or, how do we de-risk this and meet the budget and all of that? So I think they have those skills, but maybe they've been latent. And I will tell you, I think, Lee, in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, I only recently have I come to value my listening or intuition skills. I didn't value it in my job, and yet I see.
Really?
Yeah, I think I.
What was it that made you all of a sudden go, wait a second?
I think it's been, so at Gartner, we would do strategy days with customers, and those are my favorite days, and that's also part of why I came to ThoughtSpot, is to allow more time for that rather than tracking all the tools. But it was working with one CIO and his team, and he told me, you're walking into a hostile environment. They had not done anything with self-service analytics. They were still generation one reporting, and it was figuring out what was going on. And he said to me afterwards, it was the way I handled it that made the day successful. And they actually invited me back again sooner, which we didn't normally do that. And having more of those conversations with our customers here, I think I've just realized it is important. It is important when you're trying to do new things and big things and hard things. And I just never really realized it or thought about it, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe you were doing it and you just didn't realize you were doing it.
Yeah, or I still value the technical, and I love getting my hands dirty. Like my learning goals the next month, I want to get deeper a little bit into the Data Vault and Snowflake, because this is where the market is going, or where the best customers are already there, and it's changing so quickly. So I think I still value being able to get technical, and then come up to the higher level as well. But I think I just always over-indexed on the practical skills, the technical.
Yeah, it's kind of probably just where things gravitated.
What about you?
In terms of what?
What's the skill that you most want if you're gonna see the Jersey Devils?
Well, I think it's the same. It's actually very similar. I think it's related. It's being able to ask the right question, because I think that it's kind of the same thing about listening. To me, it's about communication, and you have to ask the hard questions to your customers or whoever you're working with to understand what's really going on. A lot of times they don't want to admit it,
Yeah.
And you know that the data, once you get in, the data will show what's going on. And so you really
Oh,
have to help them, but you can't do it. You have to do it. Sometimes you have to do it in a tough love way, but you can do it in ways that kind of open up, like you said, trust, kind of open up the door to it. I'll give you an example. I know we're almost out of time, but I'll give you this example. So one of the projects I did very early on with a client, and it was a pretty small project. It was just kind of imagining this one pin board. They had a one pin board, but I went to pretty senior people, and it was used. And they said, "But we want you to rethink what it could be." And so I don't just start redrawing things. I want to understand, why does this exist? So the first day it was asking people questions. And at 5 o'clock, I got a call from the head of the person leading the project. And I'm like, this is probably not good. Like, why are they calling me? Just had a bad vibe. And she said, they don't understand what you're doing. And I'm like, and I said, you have no reason to trust me, because we don't really know each other that well, but you have to trust me.
yeah.
But you have to trust me, because I really do know what's going on here. And then the next day they're like, oh yeah, this is really good now. But they needed that. It was so discomforting to them, because they just thought, oh, you're going to come in and move some stuff around on the screen and boom, we're going to have the thing we need. I'm like, no, I could do that, but it might look better, but it may still not help you.
Yeah.
And so it's really asking the right question, to me, is always the best.
Yeah. And trust. But you couch this in the context of the Jersey Devils. So I'm picturing on the boardwalk the Jersey Devils confronting me, and I will be observing, watching which way is he looking. So I know I'm like going to jump that rail and outsmart him.
Well, now I know if I really want to get you, I could just send you all kinds of little Jersey Devil stuff.
No, it freaks me out.
I accidentally uncovered something here. So on that, I think is a perfect time to stop. I think we covered a lot of great areas here that touched on how people can expand what they're doing, like you were saying, e-learning, but maybe even that e-learning has to be focused on the right area if people are starting to shift, say, away from dashboards and things like that. And some of that learning should not just be technical. Maybe there should be some more human side about communications, listening skills, asking questions, things like that. So I think it all ties together pretty nicely from start to finish. So thanks so much for your time. I know you are on a very busy schedule. Enjoy the fall up in Sparta. I'm sure it's pretty beautiful right now.
Yeah, same thing by you, Lee, in Westfield. And thank you, Lee, for all you do and have done, for more than 10 years now, 15 years for the data and analytics community.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So long, everybody.